Two ways to lose it: with honor and without honor. You're gonna lose. As soon as you sense you're gonna lose, as soon as you detect this girl, I'm not gonna get her, then you can either lose her by begging, hoping for that little tiny chance and losing all your respect, or just thinking, you know what, I'm gonna try again in 8 months. Fuck this bitch, I'll get someone else. So we all know what the correct decision is. Don't be fucking so desperate for a girl that you just lose all your honor and self-respect, because then you're never gonna get her, ever. And that's some real dumb shit. So I want you to understand, when we start talking about women, there's a whole bunch of factors you cannot control. So when it comes to approaching hot girls, you have to understand this. Some are open for business, some are closed for business. Next, what can you do? Besides the factors that you cannot control, what are the factors you can control? Well, body language is one of them, obviously. Clothes, we've discussed all this. But really, when it comes to approaching females, game as a whole is something I don't like. I don't like the idea of it, because it's bullshit. It really is bullshit. I cannot sit here and tell you how to act. Even if I told you to have the exact same mannerisms as me and say the exact same things I would say, they work for me, but they will not work for you, because we're individuals. We're absolutely individuals. For the same reason, when you learn to fight, you learn the basics of it. But if I were to say, mimic my movements millimeter for millimeter, I won't get hit, and you will get hit, because we're different bodies. It's just, we're different people. So I can't sit here and say, do this, do this, do this. Anyone who tries to tell you that, what they're doing is, they're trying to oversimplify an extremely complicated situation in an attempt to get paid. Because every single female you approach is going to be different. Every single scenario you're in is going to be different. Every restaurant you sit in is going to be different. You're different to me. The mood she's in is going to be different. The weather is going to be fucking different. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's sunny. Everything has a small part to play. So for me to sit here and say, if you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, you're going to get laid, is the kind of bullshit people package up, trying to make it a complicated situation seem simple to get money. Getting laid is not simple. The only thing you can do, if you want to retain, especially in a future video, retain as well as obtain hot women, is be yourself. You cannot project and act for any considerable period of time. That's not possible. The only way you can be anything for a considerable period of time is to be yourself. So maybe you're a shit person. Yeah, fine, maybe. But you have to absolutely and utterly be yourself. Now, there are some things which are ironclad beneficial when it comes to getting females. You can be yourself and be a confident version of yourself as opposed to a meek version of yourself. Confidence is always attractive because men were built to lead. Like we said earlier, men were built for combat. So confidence is something you need. Everyone already knows this shit. And confidence doesn't have to be sitting there and bragging. Confidence is little things. When you pick the girl up, where are we going? I know where we're going. Not where do you want to go? She doesn't want to hear that shit. She doesn't want to make decisions. Females don't want to think. They want to be led down a rabbit hole of entertainment. They want to be entertained. They don't want to think. They don't want to sit there and have to think about it. They'll say, yeah, we're going here. Even if you get there and it's shit, because I don't like it here, say, yeah, well, I do. Stick to your fucking guns. So confidence is obviously the first thing, but you know that shit already. Just be confident about who you are and what you say. Doesn't mean you have to be an asshole. You have to not be an asshole. In fact, a lot of people confuse the two. A lot of people go, girls like assholes. No, girls like confidence. But nowadays, only assholes have confidence. If you're the rare, select guy who's not an asshole and also supremely confident, you're definitely gonna fuck. You haven't got to be an asshole. It's the confidence they're attracted to, not the asshole qualities. So yeah, you absolutely have to be yourself. You have to be a confident version of yourself. But we've already talked about this in lesson 1. Believe you can do anything. You're about to go on a date with Megan Fox. Are you intimidated? No. Because you're the fucking man. And you're gonna fuck her the same night after taking her to the worst restaurant in town. Because you can do anything. Because you're a fucking G. That's how I think. I don't even brush my hair. I don't even shave. I rock up in fucking clothes and wear them for 2 days. I don't give a fuck. Turn up, hi. Start talking shit. Before you know it, she's naked. Because I know my skills. I know I'm the G. You know you're the G. You ain't got nothing to worry about. You can be yourself and you can be a completely different person to me, personality-wise, and still be a G. You can say completely different things and still be successful. You can have different mannerisms and different techniques or whatever bullshit and still be successful if you've implemented the first lessons correctly.
Look around you. Society is full of grown men with teenagers' minds. They chase dreams but build nothing real. They want success but run from hard work. These immature men destroy everything they come across because they simply refuse to accept the harsh truth that real power comes only from manning up. We have all encountered somewhere in our life this type of man that is full of great ideas and has big dreams for the future. You can see a special look in his eyes that tells you he believes he is meant for great things. He often talks about amazing projects he wants to start, yet he is stuck on the promise of what he could achieve, but he never actually produces any real results. And he always has a list of excuses ready for why things go wrong. He'll say it wasn't the right time, or he was working with the wrong people. He might even claim that people just don't understand his unique vision yet. This person could be a friend you grew up with, or maybe your younger brother. In some cases, he might be your partner or even your father. He is someone who, even though he gets older, never seems to change or grow up. You see a grown man who continues to behave like a child. His feelings are often messy and all over the place, and he consistently runs away from his responsibilities. He is always looking for an escape and avoids taking any real blame for his failures. It's even possible that a small part of you still holds on to the hope that he is going to change into a better man. And this particular pattern of thinking is often described as the man-child syndrome. This idea points to the type of immature man who avoids growing up, someone who seems to live in a constant state of preparation. It is as if he is always on the verge of starting his real life, but somehow never truly begins it. He can be very attractive because of his youthful energy, his creative ideas, and his spontaneous personality. However, there is a significant downside hiding just beneath this attractive surface. This is his complete inability to manage the normal responsibilities and challenges of the real world. The man-child believes that life should simply adjust to his personal desires. He fully expects other people to solve the problems for him that he is unwilling to face on his own. He spends his time dreaming about an absolutely perfect partner, an ideal job, and a life without any problems. And as soon as the real world fails to live up to these high expectations, he chooses to escape. He will suddenly cut off communication, quit his job or end the relationship, and go right back into the familiar cycle of daydreaming. And in his mind, he is far too special to accept the predictable nature of a normal life. But the honest truth is that he is paralyzed by the intense fear of failure, the pain of disappointment, and the simple act of growing up. And anyone who has ever tried to support a person like this understands just how draining it can be. You feel completely worn out from offering advice that is completely disregarded and from giving support that is ultimately wasted. It's a tiring experience to try and push someone forward who deep down has no desire to change their position at all. And what's even more difficult, the immature man often makes you feel as though you are the one to blame. He might suggest you are the problem for expecting too much, for pushing him to grow, or for not being content to live in a constant state of almost. However, it is important to speak about the reality of his situation. The simple truth is that this kind of man remains completely stuck. He is trapped inside a dream of being independent. But this dream has actually turned into a prison built from his own fears and his refusal to grow up. And if he doesn't wake up from this, he will find himself growing old without ever having truly lived his life in a meaningful way. This is not meant to be an attack. It is offered as a chance for serious reflection. If you are still engaged with this, it is likely because a part of you recognizes this pattern. You might be seeing it in someone close to you, or you may even recognize parts of it within yourself. The path of the man-child does not have to end in a state of never moving forward. However, a change is only possible when the truth of the situation is faced head-on. The man-child is not just a simple category of personality. Instead, it should be seen as a deep-seated pattern, a kind of mental programming that operates subconsciously in the minds of many men. This pattern is frequently mistaken for positive qualities such as having a lot of charm, acting impromptu, or possessing a truly free-spirited nature. However, underneath this attractive surface, there is a much more significant problem hiding. This issue is a strong, almost instinctive resistance to the idea of growing up. This pattern has been observed in countless individuals and has been documented in various stories throughout history. The immature man appears as someone who refuses to leave the comfortable paradise of his childhood. He wants to stay in that safe, protected space, like an emotional safety net provided by a parent, where all his needs are met and every problem is solved for him. As a result, he lives his life constantly waiting for an amazing future that is always just around the corner but never actually happens. In his own mind, he often sees himself as a person with endless potential, as if he is the uniquely gifted one who is destined for greatness. Yet, when it comes to the practical matters of daily life, he consistently fails to take control and be responsible for his own path, and you have likely seen this behavior up close. Just think about men who frequently switch jobs, always on the hunt for something that feels more important or perfect. Think of those who start new projects with a huge amount of enthusiasm, only to abandon them as soon as they encounter the first real challenge. You might also recognize the men who seem to fall in love with great intensity, but then disappear the moment the relationship begins to demand genuine commitment and maturity. These are often the same individuals who enjoy discussing complex ideas like spirituality and personal freedom, but struggle with basic responsibilities like paying a bill on time or honoring a commitment for longer than a few months. And this type of behavior is not the result of a person being unintelligent or without natural ability. In fact, the man-child is often very bright, sensitive, and shows a great deal of potential. He tends to have a very deep connection to his creative side, feeling frequent bursts of inspiration and having a powerful imagination. However, this very strength is what keeps him living in a world of ideas, allowing him to avoid the heavy responsibilities of real life. This immature man wants to fly high without ever having to build his own wings. He desires love but shies away from any real commitment. He dreams of success but is not willing to put in the hard work. He wants all the rewards of being an adult without ever having to pay the price of growing up. And naturally, when the world does not simply give him these things, he reacts with anger and defiance. He will blame the system, his family, or even life itself, but he will never look for the fault within himself. A key problem for the man-child is his poor relationship with time. He is always living in the future, constantly waiting for something else to happen first, like finding the perfect idea, the ideal partner, or just the right moment to start. He exists in a world of someday, and because of this, he is not truly living. He is simply surviving, fueled by dreams that eventually stop inspiring him and become heavy burdens. But it is also important to see the other side of this situation, because even though he is immature, the man-child has a positive energy that cannot be ignored. He can be the source of youthful spirit, endless creative imagination, and the amazing ability to reinvent life and see it in new ways. The problem is not the inner boy that exists inside the man. The problem starts when that boy completely takes over his entire life. So this brings us to the next thing we need to understand. What happens when the positive light of the man-child begins to fade and his darker shadow takes control? There is a certain magnetic quality to the man-child. He seems so light and acts in a very spontaneous way. He often speaks with the beauty of a poet, dreams with the scale of a great thinker, and appears to live completely outside the normal flow of time. This is a man who does not follow the usual rules, refuses to accept any kind of label, and never seems to cling to anything for too long. For many people, this is an incredibly fascinating way to be. He gives the impression of being completely free, and who wouldn't want that kind of freedom in a world so full of obligations, commitments, and repetitive empty routines? However, this is precisely where the trap is hidden. This so-called freedom is actually an illusion. It is a carefully constructed disguise that he uses to hide from the one thing he is most afraid of, which is reality itself. The man-child is not truly free at all. He is more like a person on the run. He is constantly running from pain, from the possibility of failure, from rejection, from feelings of frustration, and from the simple fact that time is passing. He is escaping the heavy burden of being responsible for the direction of his own life. And with every single choice he manages to avoid, every decision he puts off for another day, and every responsibility he passes on to someone else, he only strengthens the walls of his personal prison, which he has disguised as his independence. And you have probably seen this behavior up close. He might tell you he doesn't want a normal career path because he feels he is destined for something much more important. The real story, however, is that he is deeply afraid of predictable routines, of having a boss, and of long-term commitment. He will likely say that he doesn't want to be tied down to one person because relationships feel like prisons to him. But what is really happening is that he is terrified of giving up control, of allowing someone to see the real him, and of being expected to answer for his actions. He might claim that he hates rules, but when you look closer, he simply does not have the skills to cope with limits. The freedom he advertises to the world is, in truth, an immature refusal to face the difficult parts of life. He wants to be forever young, lighthearted, and untouched by problems. And to achieve this, he believes he must stay in continuous motion, floating around like a balloon that is carried by the wind. But time does not stop for anyone. And sooner or later, the real world always shows up and demands for a price to be paid. The man-child lives his life as if he is caught in a dream, constantly floating somewhere between the sky and the solid ground. He actively avoids coming back down to reality, refusing to plant his feet firmly and build a stable life. This immature man shows no interest in managing the everyday practical details that life requires. However, we all know that without a solid foundation, nothing significant can ever develop. Similarly, without putting in real work, nothing truly wonderful can blossom. And without facing difficult experiences, a person can never truly change and grow. And many people think freedom means having no limitations, but real freedom is actually the power to thoughtfully decide which people and goals are worthy of your dedication. The man-child, however, refuses to make these important choices. Instead, he simply runs away. And through this constant escape, he doesn't just damage his own future, he also slowly but surely causes deep pain to the people who try to love and support him. At the very start, Everything about him seems wonderful and exciting. The man-child gives off a special kind of energy that naturally draws people to him, making them feel inspired and completely caught up in his world. He acts with a lot of passion and excitement, and his unpredictable nature is very appealing. However, after a while, that attractive sparkle starts to dim. The qualities that once seemed positive begin to change for the worse. What used to feel like a carefree attitude soon becomes a pattern of him simply not being around. What first looked like deep emotional feeling later changes into emotional instability, and the lifestyle that seemed to represent total freedom is eventually shown for what it truly is, a way to escape from responsibility. It is at this stage that the darker side of this immature man starts to surface. This negative part of his character begins to act in quiet, tricky ways. It shows itself through small, destructive actions in his everyday life. For example, he starts forgetting important plans, he doesn't meet his deadlines, and his finances become a complete mess. He might suddenly change his mind about big decisions or break the promises he has made. Yet, he explains all these actions with a kind of beautiful story he tells himself and others. He will say things like, "I'm just not ready for this," or "I don't want to do something that doesn't feel right," or "I simply need more time." The reality, though, is much more direct and difficult to face. The simple truth is that he is scared. He is afraid of the idea of growing up. He's terrified of making a mistake, and he worries about being judged by other people or just being a normal, average person. Because of these fears, he doesn't even realize that he is actively ruining anything in his life that demands adult responsibility. This continuous pattern of self-destruction has a negative impact on all the people in his life. For his romantic partners, there is the deep pain of being in love with a man who seems wonderful at his core, but is completely unreliable in his actions. He might tell his partner he loves her, but then he will vanish without a word. He will talk about wanting to build a future together, yet he never takes any real action to make it happen. His family members often feel a growing sense of frustration as they watch him throw away his natural talents, his intelligence, and the many good opportunities that come his way. His friends also become exhausted from constantly trying to help someone who seems forever stuck in a loop of almost achieving things but never quite getting there. Underneath all these behaviors, there is an overwhelming feeling of being stuck. The man-child seems completely unable to make any real progress, as if he is caught in a phase of being a teenager emotionally, a phase that never seems to conclude. Similar to other classic personality patterns, the negative side of the man-child is fueled by thoughts and feelings he isn't even aware of. He genuinely does not see that he is the one ruining his own life. Even more concerning, he starts to believe that everyone else is the source of his problems. He begins to blame the world around him, calling it dull, too strict, and always trying to control him. From his point of view, people who have grown up and become responsible adults are like traitors who have betrayed the ideal of living a free life. As a result of this thinking, he pushes people away and spends more and more time alone. He does this because he truly thinks he is staying loyal to his unique personality, but in reality, he is just letting his own fear completely control him. But true personal growth doesn't happen by only focusing on our positive qualities. Instead, it comes from bravely understanding the more difficult, hidden parts of ourselves. This is particularly true for the man-child, whose negative side should not be ignored but must be directly confronted. The real problem is not that an adult man has a youthful spirit inside of him. The issue begins when this inner child takes control, becoming a dominant force that ruins his opportunity to experience a complete and authentic adult life. This destructive pattern often has very deep origins because the immature man is very seldom on his own in this struggle, and supporting him, almost always, is a quiet but powerful presence that encourages his behavior and keeps him locked in this stage of life. This presence is what we can call the symbolic mother figure. It is important to explore the role of this hidden relationship, including how his emotional reliance on this mother figure keeps the man-child in a state of immaturity, and why finding the strength to break this connection is his only real path to freedom. An immature man does not simply appear without a reason. Looking closely, we often find a quiet but influential person in the background of nearly every man who resists growing up. This person can be very loving, yet at the same time, her influence can feel suffocating. She shields him from life's challenges, but in doing so, she also stops him from ever learning to handle them himself. In psychology, this powerful role is often referred to as the mother figure. When her influence becomes too strong and overwhelming, she changes into a more destructive force. Instead of nurturing his life and growth, she ends up trapping him. Sometimes, this mother figure is his actual biological mother, an overprotective parent who managed every detail of his life. She was the one who never allowed him to fail and was always there to catch him. But without realizing it, she was the one who kept him from becoming a self-reliant individual. However, this role can also be a symbolic one, such as a romantic partner who acts more like a caretaker, a devoted grandmother, or any woman who offers protection, support, and comfort, while unconsciously asking for his unending loyalty in return. As a result, The man-child starts to look for something specific in his relationships with women. He isn't searching for an equal partner to share his life with, but rather for a replacement mother figure. He desires someone who will understand all his needs without making any demands, who will accept him completely without ever challenging him, and who will offer him endless support. This kind of mutually dependent connection can feel very safe and comfortable, but it is also incredibly damaging in the long run because it protects him from ever having to face the real world. As long as he is being taken care of, he feels no pressure to take action, no need to make important decisions, and no reason to mature. He effectively stays stuck in the mindset of a child, constantly expecting the women in his life to handle the very things he will not deal with himself. The symbolic mother figure also gets caught in this unhealthy dynamic. She often thinks that she is being helpful and loving, but the truth is that she is contributing to a harmful cycle of emotional dependency that ultimately drains the life and energy from both of them. So the most significant problem that can happen is when a mother does not allow her child to grow up on an emotional level. This means that while the person gets older on the outside, their inner world stays undeveloped and childlike, always looking for someone to provide comfort instead of learning to stand on their own 2 feet. This difficult situation becomes even more serious when the man-child starts having relationships. He tends to fall in love very quickly and creates a perfect, idealized image of his partner. He then puts unrealistic pressure on her, acting as if she is supposed to fix all the emptiness inside him that he won't even admit is there. However, as soon as the relationship requires real connection, commitment, or taking on responsibility, he runs away. He creates distance, ruins the connection, or even worse, he blames the other person for the problems because, deep down, he never actually wanted a partner. What he really wanted was a mother figure pretending to be a lover. So to change this pattern, a person must go through some pain. It demands a separation from this way of living. It means having to cut the emotional connection to that childish state. But it is this very difficult break that truly begins the journey of becoming your own person. Growing up certainly hurts, but refusing to grow up ends up hurting much more in the long run. And sooner or later, a point comes in life when the pretend act starts to fall apart. Dreams that didn't come true begin to feel very heavy. Moreover, the history of failed relationships leaves behind emotional scars. A life that once seemed full of endless possibilities now starts to feel much more limited. And at that point, the man who is still controlled by the man-child mentality is forced to look at himself in the mirror and finally ask, how much longer can I keep living my life as if I have all the time in the world? This is the turning point. It is the moment when the pain of staying the same becomes stronger than the fear of finally growing up. However, anyone who believes that becoming mature is a simple and easy process is completely mistaken. Becoming a complete and true individual is like an emotional birth, and just like any other kind of birth, it is an experience filled with pain, struggle, and the symbolic death of the person you used to be. Therefore, the first important step is to face the breakdown of your personal fantasies. This involves coming to terms with the fact that life will continue to move forward, whether you feel you are ready for it or not. You must accept that a perfect moment will never arrive, and you have to understand that no one is coming along to rescue you from your challenges. This process helps you to recognize that the real world is not an unfriendly or threatening place. It is in fact the only setting where anything truly authentic can ever be experienced. It means realizing that growing up is not a betrayal of your true self. On the contrary, it is the very act of building that self. To do this properly, however, you must first allow yourself to grieve. This includes grieving for the idealized, childish version of yourself, the immature man who never faced real problems. It also means grieving for the life you once imagined you would have, for the promises that were not kept, and most significantly, for the idea that someone would always be there to take care of you. So letting go of the man-child within you does not require you to crush your creativity, your cheerful spirit, or your capacity for dreaming. It simply means that you can no longer use this childish part of your personality as an excuse to avoid dealing with life. The goal is to allow that youthful side of you to keep existing, but now with the mature adult firmly in charge. Because adulthood and maturity demand that you build a solid foundation, create structure, and act with consistency. It means finding the courage to say no when running away would be the easier choice. It involves honoring your commitments even when you long for more freedom. It is about working with complete focus even when you do not feel inspired. It means remaining fully present and engaged in your relationships long after the perfect illusion you first had has disappeared. In the end, it is about trading the short-lived thrill of something new for the profound, life-altering power that comes from true and lasting continuity. And herein lies the real secret. When the immature man finally becomes a part of the mature man, that youthful part of him doesn't just go away. Instead, it changes into something new. It becomes the wellspring of his creativity, his ability to dream big, and his gut feelings. However, this energy is now guided by a strong and grown-up mind that can actually take action and make things happen in the real world. This is what it means to be truly reborn as a man. It happens when the man-child stops avoiding the challenges of reality and instead begins to build a life within it. But this change is not a simple one, and it won't happen all by itself. So many men who reach this stage in their lives feel completely lost and tired, with no idea where they should even begin. They understand that a change is necessary. They sense that the time for being a boy in their mind is over, but they don't know